Well, the world had sighed a collective relief when the MOU was signed in Versailles, and we all thought the Trump administration has finally realized the futility of trying to challenge Iran over the Strait of Hormuz. Unfortunately, it seems like Mr. Trump has changed his mind. We don't know how exactly what happened, but what he did is not going to change the facts on the ground, which is that Iran still retains the full control of the Strait of Hormuz, and there's nothing United States can do about it. There's no military options. In fact, United States is in a weaker position vis-a-vis Iran now than it was at the time when it signed the MOU, because now United States has less ammunitions to go after Iran, whereas Iran has plenty of missiles and drones launched at U.S. bases in the region.
And Carl, what do you think? Okay, you mentioned Donald Trump changed his mind. You don't know why, but what do you think? What do you think contributed to his emboldenment? Because there's a lot of questions. And in 38 days, yes, he bombed the heck out of the country, infrastructure. He killed a lot of civilians. He killed Iran's beloved leader, a bunch of top people in command. Nevertheless, he didn't really achieve what he said his main objectives were initially. And I want to ask you, what do you think led to him thinking, or what do you think even his objective is to reimpose this aggression? He talks about he wants the country never to achieve a nuclear weapon, but he last in June, the 12-day war of June of last year, where he bombed 3 nuclear facilities. He said now, after this bombing, the country can never build a nuclear bomb. So then why this February 28th aggression, and why is this reimposition now?
Well, we only know their public statement. Well, according to the Trump administration themselves, their 4 stated objectives to launch war against Iran is A, they want to denuclearize. Well, A is regime change. They wanted regime change in Iran. That did not happen. 2, they wanted to denuclearize Iran. Well, that did not happen. 3, they want to deplete Iran's offensive capabilities, especially come to missiles and drones. Well, we can see that now. That also did not happen. They're far from reaching that goal. They're further from reaching that goal today than it was before, because despite all the lies that they've been telling us about how U.S. have completely degraded Iranian military capability, that's just flat out untrue. As we've seen, as U.S. bases continue to be pummeled by Iranian drones and missiles.
And for our viewers that are just tuning in, this extended conversation on the position of aggression against Iran's very robust retaliatory response. We have a couple of guests with us, and images that are on your screen right now is the Strait of Hormuz. You can see very little, barely any movement there through the strategic waterway. And this is in light of the U.S. president saying everything's back to normal. The U.S. has opened the strait, and navigation is back to where it was. And you can see the bold lie, as those are live images and not by I believe an international monitoring site that monitors maritime traffic, and that's not an Iran-controlled site. Nevertheless, those are the facts on the ground. Joining us is Carl Jha out of Bali, Indonesia, and also Zainab Zakaria, our press TV correspondent. Zainab, I want to come to you. We know the Yemenis mentioned that they're going to also impose a ban on Saudi navigation through the Red Sea and el-Mandeb down there. And tell us what the facts are on the ground when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, the facts that the U.S. is trying to sell its international waterway once again to the international community, who is a true sovereign, who has true sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. How fundamental has it been in this conflict, and what would it mean for the global energy security if the Yemenis assert their control on the Bab el-Mandeb Strait as well?
Well, it's not about if, it's about when. Let's not forget that one of the crises that people warned the Americans about to not start a war with Iran is that it's easy to start it. It's very difficult to contain it because the region is very, very volatile. Let's not forget that there is an ongoing battle between the Yemenis and the Saudis. They don't have an MOU. They don't have, a ceasefire between them after the 10-year war that the Saudis launched upon Yemen that created, the crisis that we now have in Yemen, where there are three simultaneous governments operating, one supported by the UAE, another group supported by the Saudis, and then we have the Ansarullah movement, which consists of the Houthis and other groups that have decided to join them. And this is a continuation of the Arab Spring, as it is usually called, where people in the region were tired of the U.S. imposed government on them, and they decided to have a revolution that spread across many Arab countries. Of course, that revolution was hijacked. In Egypt, it was hijacked. In many other Arab countries, it was hijacked. The only one that is still surviving with that revolution are the Yemenis. So there are a lot of bad blood that is just been contained, and when you rip it apart, there is no way for you to be able to contain it. So the fact that the el-Mandeb Strait will come into this battle has always been something that many pundits and analysts have always warned about. That's why they advised Trump to end this battle as soon as possible. We know how effective the Yemenis were in blocking Israeli ships in the el-Mandeb Strait, and how effective that was, and how impactful it was also on the global movements of goods and services. Now, if you add it to whatever insecurity we're experiencing now in the Strait of Hormuz, it is catastrophic for the world. But I think the Trump administration, under the Trump administration, and also with the influence of Netanyahu, we think that they will be able to contain, this crisis. The problem is the only reason we haven't seen, a massive crisis when it comes to petroleum and fuel and also gas is because of the amount of reserve that China has, and that China has been assisting, the global economy inadvertently, in keeping this from blowing up in our face, and also the controlled release of petroleum from the IEA, the International Energy Agency. This is the only reason where the world has not been led into a crisis, but we know that the U.S. economy is nothing but a Ponzi scheme. It is only being held now with, a few words here and some imposition by the Trump administration. And if this war does not end, it is not just the people in West Asia who will have to bear the brunt of it. It's the entire world.
Thank you, Zainab. And Carl, I want to also come back to you. Your thoughts on that too. And you also mentioned that they're trying to shoot for regime change. They failed in the initial 38 days. And who knows if that's still part of the objective. I'm sure it is, but they probably found out and noticed in the first 40 days since February 28th that's kind of a pipe dream at this point. But they also want to curb Iran's regional influence, cut its ties with its friends in the resistance. They've also, for some time now, you very well know, have had their eyes on Iran's deterrent missile arsenal and program. My question to you, and Iran knows that without its missiles and without its friends in axis of resistance, it would not be as successful as it is today in warding off this aggression against the country. So these are obvious red lines that Donald Trump and the U.S. military house or his friends in Tel Aviv will never be able to deprive the Iranians of.
That's correct. I mean, the U.S. administration has consistently underestimated Iran's capability. To give you an idea how much is underestimated, before the Iran war that U.S. and Israel has launched, they actually estimated that China has a total of 3,000 ballistic missiles. And the fact is Iran already launched over 7,000 ballistic missiles to U.S. bases all around the target. That just shows you how much of the U.S. intelligence and CIA are about the estimate about the capability of their perceived adversaries. And you're right about I forgot to mention the fourth objective of U.S. administration, which is, as you mentioned, to cut off Iranian linkage and support for its allies in the resistance, whether it's Ansarullah in Yemen, whether it's the militias in Iraq, or Hezbollah in Lebanon. That did not happen. And in fact, these allies have made Iranian control over the region even stronger. The other guest has already mentioned, one reason that the world's energy price hasn't gone through stratosphere is because China has voluntarily cut back its oil import by half, which is about 5.5 million barrels of oil per day. Now, Saudi Arabia is currently shipping oil through the pipeline to the port of Yanbu, which has a capacity of 4.5 million barrels a day that continually traverse through the Red Sea. Well, guess what? With Yemenis throwing their lots together with Iran, they just shut that off. That 4.5 million barrels a day is just almost equivalent of how much China has already cut back. So there's a very little slack in the world energy market today. You know, the strategic petroleum reserve all around the world has already been drawn down after 3 months. United States itself is only 1.5 months away from using up all its crude oil inventory. So this time, it's going to be a lot worse than the time when Trump did sign that surrender document at Versailles, which is the MOU. For some reason, you know, you asked me to speculate why did Trump change his mind. Well, I can only say that we do know there's one interested party that really wanted to prolong this conflict, and that is Israel. Because Israel understands that for it to achieve the greater Israel project in the region, by it alone, you cannot hope to confront Iran. That was plenty obvious, demonstrated by the 12 Days War. They wish, Netanyahu and his government wish to drag the United States into this Middle East quagmire on Israel's side, and they were very, they were very clear that they were dead set against the MOU. So I can only speculate maybe there's some Israeli pressure that made Trump to renege on his promises.
Right, and this new reality you mentioned taking shape, and also Zainab alluded to it Carl, the Bab el-Mandeb getting jammed up by the Yemenis, while simultaneously we see some cohesion. The Strait of Hormuz obviously shut down by the Islamic Republic. How will this, do you think, impact global energy security, and how profound do you see the blowback of that being for the U.S. president and all his allies in Europe and across the North America?
It's huge. It's huge. Well, what we do know is prior to the war, prior to the illegal war of aggression committed by Israel and the United States against Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf, was providing about 20% of the world's oil supply, which is about 20 million barrels of oil per day. And now, by most optimistic estimate, there are 7 million barrels of oil still coming out via the pipeline through Saudi Arabia at the port of Yanbu that was traversing through Red Sea, and possibly via the UAE pipeline that was going to at Fujairah. But Iran has already shut down the UAE pipeline, so that's 1.52 million barrels a day gone. And now with Yemeni blockading the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, that means that 4.5 million barrels of oil is also offline. So there's no more slack left in the world to sustain this energy shock. And you know, Iran has been playing this very strategically and very patiently. They only play this card after Trump has reneged on his promises, because the MOU has spelled out very clearly that Iran possessed the control of the Strait of Hormuz. Yet Trump, for some reason, he thought he could challenge that by prompting tankers to transit through the southern channel of the Strait of Hormuz through the Omani channel. Well, that Iran has to remind everybody, no, we do in fact remain full control of the Strait of Hormuz, and everything has to go through us and the Persian Gulf Strait Authority. Trump just, the fact is, it's the U.S. establishment just cannot stomach the idea that it has to give up the control of the Strait of Hormuz to Iran to basically hand Iran over the strategic victory in West Asia, which basically means the complete defeat of the U.S. empire. The U.S. imperial alliance system all around the Gulf is in tatters as all the U.S. bases has gone up in smokes.
and it was wide open before February 28th for international navigation. You very well know. Now, a lot of this has to do with Israel's regional plans, Carl. You very well know, because a lot of people in America say that there was no imminent threat to U.S. mainland or U.S. interests by Iran, and they can't understand why Donald Trump even initiated or was part of this this attack on Iran with the Israeli regime. And now, if you notice, the very first stipulation on the MOU was a stop to war on all fronts, including in Lebanon. And it seems like the Israelis could not really get on board with that from the very onset of the MOU and its implementation. You notice there was a small de-escalation, not enough to appease neither the Iranians or Lebanese people. My question to you, we have to ask ourselves, to what point is the U.S. going to cater to Israel's plans for this Greater Israel project, to occupy parts of Lebanon, to try to take Gaza for the Palestinians, to annex 80% of the occupied West Bank? Because this is really what this is all about, allowing Israel to have free reign. This is what Iran and a lot of even regional countries that even act like they don't, but they do want to put a stop to Israel's machinations in West Asia and its destabilizing actions. And really, how much in a way, the U.S. is allowing Israel to hold the global economy hostage until it achieves what it wants to achieve.
Well, that's exactly what happened. I mean, before Trump signed the MOU, at the time he signed the MOU, he justified it by saying he does not want to be Herbert Hoover. He does not want to be the U.S. president that led the world down the path of the global depression. Well, right now he is Herbert Hoover. And the only one that could potentially benefit from this global catastrophe is Israel. Netanyahu has to do it for his personal reason to stay out of jail, but most of the Israelis and the Israeli government, they're still hell-bent on implementing the so-called Greater Israel project, which is to stretch their control from River Nile to River Euphrates. And they know they cannot do that with Iran remain as a potent political entity on the scene. So this is why they hope to leverage United States military strength to break up Iran, but that did not happen. And unfortunately, United States right now, both sides of the aisle, whether Democrats or Republican, they're both in the deep pockets of the Israeli lobby. The only thing that Democrats is fighting the Republicans about is who gets to play the puppy dog for Israeli interest. And so this is what led to the situation we're here today.
And Zainab, we only have a few minutes left, and I feel like we're doing our viewers an injustice. I'll give them a quick recap. 10 days, Zainab, of renewed aggression against Iran by the U.S. and the Israeli regime, and 10 days that the U.S. has been hitting the country. Tell our viewers what's been hit, where it's been hit, to what extent, and how Iran has responded.
You and I know that on Iranian local channels, this war has a name. Each of the war have been given a name. The 40-day war was named the Ramadan War. This war is Hormuz War. And I think that is something that everyone around the world knows. There are three levels to what the Americans have been targeting. First, military infrastructure, which is how Iran has been able to govern and control the Strait of Hormuz. The second is infrastructure, public infrastructure, bridges, road, electricity grids, and water desalination plants in order to push further the Iranians into accepting whatever deal the Americans want. And the third and most importantly, in my opinion, that I think is being targeted is just random things. The Americans think that the more they target Iran, the more they put the country under pressure, the more they prepare the ground perhaps for an invasion of certain Iranian islands. It may force the population to finally rise and, in their dream overthrow what they refer to as the regime. So there are three layers to what they're trying to target and what they're trying to achieve. None of that has been very effective. Like our colleague said, just a few minutes ago, that if anything, the control of Iran over the Strait of Hormuz is not something that is now being speculated. It's something that everyone around the world now know that, you cannot take control of the Strait of Hormuz, militarily speaking. But Trump, no one knows how his mind works. We know that he had to fire several generals within his own cabinet in order to be able to proceed, with his so-called military plan. So it's not that, the military presents a plan to Trump. It is Trump that says, this is what I want, and the military now need to have to collate and figure out how to satisfy Trump. And that has been costing the Americans a lot, in terms of lives and in terms of all their equipment as well.
And Carl, when we look at this, there's just a recent Ipsos poll released, Carl, saying that this is possibly the most unpopular since records started being kept. War in American history. It mentioned the Vietnam War, 65% unpopularity. It mentioned Iraq, I think, at 66. They're very close. And I know there's a standard thing of deviation here that we have to take into account. So they could be all wrong. They're very close. 65, 66. I believe Afghanistan was 67. The Iran war tops it. The U.S. Imposed war against Iran. 68% unpopularity, supposedly unprecedented. What does this mean for Donald Trump when he doesn't have the American people's mandate behind him? Seems like he has a lot of blowback, even with him from his fellow Republicans. Europeans, for the large part of this, were kind of even ridiculing it at one point. And it seems after that NATO summit, some of them had changed course. Nevertheless, it's a very unpopular war. Does this impact or not Donald Trump's decision-making moving forward?
Well, I think Trump is playing, he's playing a tightrope game. At one hand, he wants to distract the public from the full release of Epstein files. So he has to jump through hoops, create distraction after distractions to get the Epstein files off the headline. And, this is why they're coming out crazy stories about UFOs, and that he's claiming China is interfering with the U.S. election. And now he's restarting the Iran war. And I think Trump is the type of person who is driven by instinct. So I don't think he has any long-term planning at all. He's just looking at this, getting through day-by-day basis. And for now, his main focus trying to put the Epstein file behind him. I mean, as you mentioned, the war is deeply unpopular, even among MAGA supporters of Trump. Like the poll has shown, the majority of the MAGA, the self-declared MAGA supporter has said the war gotta end. And yet, Donald Trump thought this is somehow he can somehow able to finance this and put pressure on Iran. But only pressure he's bringing on is on the world economy. And he's set to go down in history as another Herbert Hoover.